Good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Ted Keller. We're going to do a review of the weather here, getting into the holiday weekend. We got some tropical activity. The East Pacific, well, that's been well underway for weeks and weeks now, but there could be some stuff off the coast of Florida, either side, even the Carolinas this weekend. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Besides that, we also have just general pockets of a little bit of heat, a little bit of heavy rainfall, a little bit of monsoon rainfall. We'll discuss all of that here in just a second. Well, the tropical Atlantic forecast for tropical storms or hurricanes is out here today, and this is through day 7. But this area here that includes central and northern Florida, coastal areas of the Carolinas, Georgia, and even a small corner of northeastern Gulf of Mexico is kind of under notice that there could be some tropical development this weekend. So it's a 7-day forecast, but it's really meant to be this weekend, and it's about a 40 to 60% chance of some development in that area. Even if a storm doesn't develop, the rain in those areas, especially Florida, will be pretty heavy, and I'll show that to you here in a separate discussion. Now, we've already gone through Andrea and Barry. Now we're on to Chantal. That would be the next name on the list for a season that typically doesn't really reach its peak until about September 10th or so. But we do get tropical systems in July quite often, and they're forecasting, and by that I mean NOAA, is about a 60% chance of an above normal season with somewhere between 13 and 19 named storms, hurricanes 6 to 10, major hurricanes 3 to 5. Again, I need to add that there's no knowledge of where those will hit. My graphic moved a little bit here, but we do have a tropical forecast for the East Pacific too, and Flossie is already in progress. So the next storms are actually Gil, Henriette, and I think Ivo. So Hurricane Flossie is a pretty strong hurricane. There it is. I just put it on the wrong graph. Anyway, it's going to mainly stay out to sea. Sometimes these storms do come ashore in Baja, but this one will not. This one is pretty strong, as you can see on the visible satellite loop here. Can't quite make out an eye there, but it is very common in the eastern Pacific to get tropical storms and hurricanes. In fact, the count is usually pretty high. The reason you never hear about it is because it generally never really affects any major land areas. Sometimes they come ashore in Mexico and mountainous areas, produce some heavy rains. Most of the time they go out to sea and they die in cold waters. Let's switch gears now. Take a look at the 500 millibar anomaly here. This is actually for July 1st through July 7th, but it kind of tells a tale here. So the 500 millibar flow is just kind of a general idea of where things are flowing. So when you see a high like this, that's generally going to be a stretched out area of high pressure across the southwest and the deep south. This is enough to keep shallow cold fronts going. So this flow out of the west-northwest will keep a few fronts kind of dropping in like that, but they will hit their heads on this high. Troughing, though, is interesting here. We're seeing kind of a below normal when compared to in other words, the blue color is an anomaly. So there is going to be a series of troughs that moves through here over the next 7 days. And as far as moisture is concerned, the monsoon's kicking in. So we have moisture coming in from the Gulf all the way back into West Texas and New Mexico. And I think that even later on in this period, beyond July 7th, this moisture will start to increase through parts of Arizona as well. On the heat side, it is pretty typical summer heat. Nothing that really smacks of emergency or long-term heat here, but hazardous heat is just any description where, there might be a heat advisory eventually issued, or maybe in some of the larger cities, an excessive heat warning might go into effect. This is the period July 5th, so this Saturday through the 9th, and we've got pockets of interior Washington and Oregon, and of course in the low deserts, including Las Vegas. But this is a progressive heat pattern here that will affect areas for the 4th of July weekend. We'll take a look at the National Weather Service projection for high temperatures. This is on Friday the 4th. So Chicago in the low, maybe mid-90s. So pockets of 90s showing up as far north as the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and pretty common through Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky as well. Moving forward to Saturday, it cranks up a little bit. Chicago mid, maybe upper 90s in that part of the world. That may be an example of where a little bit more of a heat advisory or warning might go into effect temporarily, because you already see temperatures up here. Those are those weak shallow cool fronts I was talking about are only going to be in the low 80s on Saturday, so quite a change. And then this entire thing shifts on Sunday. I just changed the projection here to show you where it moves to. On Sunday, the centroid, I guess you could say, if the heat moves more over to the Detroit area. The Appalachians, of course, are enjoying the elevation and the cool, but the 90s are pretty common in parts of West Virginia and increasingly up in New England, Massachusetts, and parts of Vermont and New Hampshire as well. Well, let's see what's going on here this afternoon. Well, we've got pretty much a weak flow pattern going on across the country. Convection always shows up as the bubbly stuff, so a lot of this stuff is offshore, but there are some thunderstorms in the Carolinas. We'll zoom in on those and take a look at these in Wisconsin too. Nothing really widespread severe. Now, we're watching this area up here. I'll show you the severe weather forecast here in a minute. And really, it's a pretty typical summer pattern. If there's strong flow at all, it would be here. You can even see some smoke coming off of some of the fires in Canada, and also some intermountain instability creating some storms there. And this trough of low pressure is also helping to initiate showers and thunderstorms in an area that we normally wouldn't see a whole lot. There's a trough of low pressure here, and that's helping to define these clouds sweeping across the northern plains with drier, more stable air for those areas. So good news for them. By the way, these areas over the last, for June, basically had a real rough time with severe weather. So thankfully, even though they are the epicenter of severe weather, the intensity of it is really reduced here over the next couple of days. Just take a look at the advisories real quick. The only heat advisory is up here in Montana. These are red flag warnings for fire and burning. Usually those expire in the early evening and then get reinitiated. These are just air alert advisories around major metropolitan areas like Denver and Dallas, and a little bit around Memphis too. And then flash flood, or I think these are just flood watches. And you notice a couple of warnings here and in Wisconsin. Let's take a look at the radar. Well, these were snapped around 5:30 or so. I just wanted to show you there's a cluster of thunderstorms here around Green Bay, and there was a warning in effect for one of those. But there are no watches in effect right now of any kind. So the Storm Prediction Center not really taking that threat to be widespread enough to be of any concern. Again, there was a severe thunderstorm warning south of Raleigh earlier here late in the afternoon, and just a smattering of storms. Most of these are going to stay below severe limits. Certainly good news. But let's take a look at those projections. There is sort of a 1 out of 5 risk area, so this is just not a real strong chance of severe weather, but you already saw a couple of warnings in effect there in Minneapolis back into Wisconsin. Nothing has been developing in Montana yet, and the threat where I showed you in the Carolinas doesn't even register on their on their scales, so not a big threat. Now we go into Thursday, tomorrow. Again, North Dakota up into Canada, Winnipeg has a 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, and some of these northwest flow showers and storms could develop some wind gusts and maybe a little bit of hail. That really sums up the extent of any major areas of severe weather forecast for the next 7 days or so. I will show you the supercell composite forecast by NIU for July 3rd through the 8th, all in the northern plains, maybe a little pocket around Kansas. And then it really kicks in around July 9th to the 15th. So supercells are just storms that hold together, last longer. The updraft doesn't, or the downdraft doesn't kill the updraft, so they can last long enough to even produce hail and gusty winds. And a lot of times they are rotating, and that could lead to tornado development, although the low-level wind field is really missing from this forecast. It's hard to know this many weeks out. But we'll take a look at the third week anyway, July 16th through the 22nd, that same general area, pretty much what you would expect for the month of July. Slight risk, at least a 15% chance of heavy rain. Tucson, El Paso, southern New Mexico, parts of interior Arizona, that area out in the Carolinas where the thunderstorms were active, and also some showers and storms coming in from the Gulf into Florida. For Thursday, I zoomed in on this a little bit. This area kind of shifts more to Odessa, Midland area, much of western Texas, but not the Panhandle, and much of eastern New Mexico. This actually is split in two. This is the Thursday forecast for Tampa. Again, a slight risk of some hazardous heavy rain areas breaking out there. Generally speaking, though, if we go through the period July 5th through the 9th, so this starts on Saturday, we have that possible tropical weather there. As you can see, we took a look at that already. And heavy rain progressing across Minnesota and Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. Also a pocket of heavy rain possible in Missouri through that period. Now, again, this isn't specific. This is through that general period. We'll take a look at some rain forecasts. So here is the Weather Prediction Center's forecast for heavy rain. So you're seeing, 4 or 5 inch totals possible from Tampa down to around Sarasota in those areas and Naples. And this is for the next 7 days, but most of this is meant to be this Friday through the weekend, maybe a little bit next week too. And then over the weekend, these are not as impressive, but 1 to 2 inch totals could fall through parts of Kansas and Missouri and up into Iowa. And even going further on beyond that, it looks like we have rain hazards. This is way out there, July 10th through the 12th, with a sagging front here through Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, and Oklahoma, stretching over to Virginia and Pennsylvania, and a small pocket. Remember, I was telling you the monsoon may actually kick in from this direction, not just this direction, so maybe some heavy rain potential there in parts of Arizona and New Mexico. Again, that's pretty late, mid part of July, around the 10th through the 16th. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.